We're now joined on the Derryogue Road here in Kilkeel in County Down, and as you can see, members of Newry Maritime Association, the Locks Agency as well, and this is part of our project with the Newry Maritime Association and indeed the Locks Agency. Just to say that we're now at what was known as a temporary mortuary for those that perished in the Connemara and Retriever accident out in Carlingford Lough. So we're just going to join these guys at the unveiling of a special plaque at the site.
Tony is doing a living documentary of the Connemara Retriever story from, we started off with our launch on the 11th of June at Carlingford Lough Yacht Club, and he's here today to film proceedings, and when we get to November we'll have a complete record of what has been done. We have 11 events leading up to the 3rd of November this year and the centennial event in Newry, when we'll unveil the memorial that has been designed by our chairman Michael O'Hara here. So here we are in Derryogue, and why are we here today? What is the relevance? What is the link to Nicholson's store and this awful tragedy? Most of you will know, and for those who don't, two vessels collided at the mouth of Carlingford Lough on the 3rd of November 1916, and 94 people lost their lives in what is still the worst tragedy to impact on our district of Newry, Mourne, North Louth. We haven't had anything, thankfully, since, and nothing relates more back to famine times, and South Down and South Armagh suffered very badly during the years of the famine, 1845 to 1849, and the impact of that famine was felt for 100 years. And literally we have come from Greencastle Pier, where we unveiled a plaque. The pier was built by the owners of the passenger ferry Connemara in 1880, and passengers, the London and North West Steamship Company, or Railway Company, who owned the Connemara, they were one of the largest railway companies in Great Britain, and they had over 2,200 miles of rail track. They expanded into Ireland, and they ran from Holyhead to Dublin, Holyhead to Dunleary, and then they identified Greenore as a likely spot to increase their business. They built the port in Greenore, and they built a rail link from Greenore to Dundalk, which opened in 1873 and linked up with the Great Southern Railway from Dublin to Belfast. 3 years later, they built a rail link from Greenore to Newry, which linked into the Great Northern Railway at Gora Wood, and the whole system closed down in 1951. They also had a paddle steamer service which operated from Greenore to Warren Point and then Greencastle to bring passengers across the lough to go onto the ferry at Greenore. As I said, Greencastle Pier was built in 1880, and we don't know if there were any passengers that went to the Connemara on that occasion from Greencastle, but what we do know is that thousands upon thousands of immigrants walked down that wooden pier and never came back to Ireland again. So it's a very poignant feature here, and Sean Cunningham joins us today. The Cunningham family own the pier today, and it's a scheduled monument. But back to Derryogue and back to the potato store here, 1913. When the ships went down on Friday night, the 3rd of November at 8:30, word didn't get to Greenore till 9:30 the next morning. Word didn't get to Greenore or to Kilkeel until 8 o'clock the next morning. And a Sergeant Tarby, who was in charge of the RAC in Kilkeel, came out here to Derryogue, and he described seeing 20, 30 bodies in a field. And there was also a corner of the field with a tarpaulin covering body parts. Limbs were stored under a tarpaulin. As you know, there are 11 bodies interred in the old cemetery in Kilkeel, of bodies that were unidentifiable. In the worst cases, the sex of the bodies couldn't be determined because they'd been scalded when the boilers exploded in the ships, they'd been smashed against the rocks, and 11 were unidentifiable. 12 to 14, the passenger list wasn't completed that night, but at least 12 bodies weren't recovered out of 94. But around 80 bodies were recovered, and they were brought here. And James Nicholson was the man, Edward's grandfather, and it's lovely to see the family still in ownership today. And in a spirit of generosity, the Nicholson family opened up the store, and they allowed it to be used as a temporary mortuary. And the same Sergeant Tarby, when he gave evidence on the Monday, the 6th of November in Kilkeel, he said when he walked through the door, for 50 yards, there were bodies laid out on each side of this door. And the scenes were harrowing as relatives came to identify and search for the bodies of their loved ones. And we can only imagine, or can we even imagine, the trauma here in this very spot 100 years ago. But with the same spirit of generosity, Edward and Shirlee have given us permission today to cite the commemorative plaque, and they're going to unveil the plaque today. And I think it's a fitting tribute to something that has almost been airbrushed from our history. I know certainly in Newry, and I'm from Newry, and the retriever was a Newry registered coal boat. You could walk around Newry and you won't find any evidence of the tragedy that unfolded here on the 3rd of November 100 years ago. And I think it's an awful shame. We in the Newry Maritime Association are trying our best to create a maritime footprint in Newry, because the port was so important to the development of the town, the employment, everything rallied around the port. So it's very important that we remember events like this, because local history instills civic pride and it defines who we are. The area you come from, it creates civic pride, and with civic pride comes civic identity. And you're proud to say, I'm from Kilkeel, I'm from Newry, I'm from Dundalk, wherever. And so it is today. I'm delighted to be here as guests of Edward and Shirlee, and thank you very much to both of you for allowing us to put this commemorative plaque here that your grandfather gave the family had such a role to play, and a generous role to play. And I'd like to hand you over now to our chairman, Michael O'Hare. Michael comes from a fishing background like Edward, and many of you might know that we have lit Hallbeline up, the lighthouse. It's illuminated as part of the events, and this man is the man who devised the system, sourced the parts, and when we got funding from the Locks Agency, they literally worked off the template that Michael handed them. And it's entirely down to this man what's happening at Hallbeline at the minute. But anyway, our chairman, Michael O'Hare.
Thank you, James, very much indeed for that very comprehensive breakdown of the events that transpired with the sinking of the Connemara retriever and that. I think really what we need to, first of all, take into consideration is that this event took place in the First World War. Was 2 years into its term of 4. There was a lot of submarine activity in the area. The Battle of the Somme, after 141 days, was coming to its final closure, with the dramatic loss, really, of over 1 million lives of young men on all sides. So the Lusitania had been torpedoed the year before. There was an awful lot of things happening in and around about the same time, and sometimes one tragedy can get overshadowed by the enormity of another. And I think possibly the sinking of the Connemara and the Retriever was one such case. And as James says, this is a terrible tragedy right in our midst that has been simply forgotten. And this is what we are trying to do, and through the generosity of Edward and Shirlee here, this barn, which served such really a somber purpose at the time of the tragedy, when the families were coming and hopefully find their loved ones among the dead. That there's a certain irony with that, when you think that most people expect to look for their friends of that they're not among the dead. In this case, it was the right opposite, because as James says, there were those who were not found, there were those who could have been found, but there was no DNA, so they couldn't even recognise what was buried. So there's a terrible tragedy to all of this, but it is our purpose to try and bring this to the fore and bring it into the modern day. When you look at this barn here today, this barn unfortunately was christened by the tears of the bereaved, and that in itself is a very, very poignant thing to remember. But what I cannot say much more than that. I could go on and try and relate the whole history of it, but that's not what we are here about today. The plaque on the wall is just like opening a book, and you read the preface, then you feel that you want to read the story. And this is what we are trying to do, is to highlight people's interest in this terrible tragedy and the significance of this barn to that tragedy. And that's basically what we are trying to do. So thank you very, very much indeed for your presence here today. It's wonderful to see, an interest like this. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I'm glad to see we're joined now by Sean Cunningham, former pilot on the loch. And as I said, we were earlier at Greencastle Pier, where so many dreams, ideas and dreams were created with the people who walked down that wooden pier. And so many dreams were shattered, lives wrecked with the awful tragedy that night on the 3rd of November. But through it all, the generosity and spirit of the Nicholson family shone through the next morning, almost 100 years ago now. And that same spirit of generosity is manifested here today with Edward, the grandson of James, and his wife Shirley, who have given us permission to put this fine commemorative plaque on the wall. And it gives me no greater pleasure than to ask Shirley and Edward to come forward and unveil the plaque. Thank you very much. There we are. And just to read you the plaque for Derryogue, it says, this building was used as a temporary mortuary to facilitate the accommodation and identification of bodies which were conveyed here from the beaches. Local farmers used their horses and carts to transport the bodies here, and harrowing scenes were witnessed as relatives arrived to see their loved ones seek their loved ones. Today, just as a century ago, the property remains in the ownership of the Nicholson family, unveiled by Edward and Shirlee Nicholson. And please, once again, give Edward and Shirlee a big round of applause. And I've just been told by Shirlee that we've all been invited to come up to the house for refreshments after the event, and you're all very welcome. Thank you very much.
Welcome back, friends, and we're joined today with
Leslie Boydell.
Jean Boydell. Anne Boydell.
and Boydell. And tell me this, the Boydell sisters, friends, live in the Banter show, and you're here to talk about your grandfather.
Our grandfather was on the Connemara. He was from Blackwater Town. His name was Jack Beattie, and he was returning from having visited his family to join his wife. He was living and working in Liverpool at the time, and obviously our grandmother was left with two very small children, one of which was our mother, and she returned to Wicklow, which was where she was from, and we grew up in Dublin then.
Is that right? Well, Blackwater Town to Wicklow's a bit of a distance, and isn't it?
Yes.
And where did they meet?
As far as we know, they met in Dublin.
Is that right?
He was working in Dublin and they met in Dublin.
Unbelievable. And I know, have you ladies got different accents?
Well, we're all living in different places.
That's why they have different accents.
Yeah. I'm living in England now.
What part?
Northeast.
Oh, northeast. Good, good. My sons are up around there too as well.
Oh, is he?
When they're right in the centre. What about yourself?
I'm still in Dublin. I've lived all my life in Dublin.
What
I'm still
part
there.
of Dublin?
I live in Monkstown at the moment, which is
Monkstown.
outside. But we grew up for a bit further out.
Very good. And what about yourself?
I live in Northern Ireland. I'm near Lisbon.
And you're near Lisburn.
Yeah, I live there.
Isn't it a wonderful situation when you find out the likes of your great grandfather and your mother or your grandmother? And just shows you we all kind of spread out, us Irish, and individually, don't we?
Well, it just has sort of created a lot of connections for us. I mean, I've lived in Northern Ireland now for 30 years, and I've only really recently become to appreciate that actually an important part of my family was from Northern Ireland.
Not unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah,
as I
that's
say,
right.
You know, due to this event, I know it's an awful tragedy, but there you are, 100 years later. You know, I'm meeting you guys and you're meeting everybody else.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of families still affected by it, isn't there?
As far as we know, his body was never found. He was one of the unidentified or not found. We don't know whether he was still in the sea or whether he was one of the ones that was.
He could have been in here.
Yeah, been in here. Well, have been in here.
And it is a strange feeling, to be part of this event. It's a very historical event, and it's hard to believe that this was actually a temporary mortuary, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know?
Yes. No, it's very poignant because none of us have ever really been down here, spent time here, but it's been very, very moving just to go out in the boat over the place where the Connemara went down and to see where the boat would have come out from, and it's just really made it all much more real for us.
Yeah.
It's really the first time we've felt any connection to our grandfather, because our mother never knew him. She was a very small baby when he died. Her mother never talked about him because she was so heartbroken. So this is really the first time we've ever felt any real connection to him as a real person.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
That's lovely.
It's history as we know it right now today, isn't it? And as I said, the different families, that are still attached to some of the victims, and everybody's talking, and it's actually a great event. It's bringing families together across different communities as well, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, ladies, thanks very much for talking to us, and indeed, thanks for joining us part of this historical event here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Friends, we're on the Derryogue Road for another fantastic unveiling of a very well made plaque, I have to say. Mickey Mullen, sterling work yet again. We're joined with James and the main man himself from the Maritime Association, Michael O'Hare. Michael, you and James, I have to say, at the unveiling you've done two very, I'd say, heart-wrenching speeches, to say the least, on the victims and how they were brought here and what have you. It's yet another tribute to the people that lost their lives in the loch.
Well, that's right, because so much of this has been forgotten about, and if we don't do something like this, which will highlight the tragic event that it was, all we're trying to do is to instill people to find out more. We can't simply tell the whole story on a plaque and that. So I would liken this to as the plaque being like picking up a book, and you read what the author has written on the back, and you open the first page and you read the preface and that. This is basically what these plaques represent, is go and find out more about this terrible tragedy, and basically, that's we can only do so much. We can't frog march people into finding out about it.
Yeah. Well, at least now you have it documented, and it's paying homage and tribute to those victims at the end of the day, isn't it?
Well, yes, it is, because they have been forgotten about. Yes, the tragedy itself is one thing, but the human side of this, where these 94 people just perished, in a matter of minutes. That in itself, it's very, very easy to say, oh yes, two ships collided and they sank and 94 people lost. But it's when you go into the tragic side of that, like this barn here, where people came to identify their loved ones, and as they hoped, that their loved ones were among the dead. When you listen to people in that, you hope, or relatives hope, that these people, their relatives that have been hopefully not involved in it, but are not among the dead. In this case, it was ironic that they were. They hoped that they were, because so many families, their relatives were not there.
Such an incredible,
and that is that's the side of it that people don't think about.
Yeah.
This store here was christened simply by the tears of the loved ones that there they were trying to identify their loved ones, and that the trauma itself must have been absolutely horrendous.
It's shocking. It is shocking, and but it's great that we're here to be able to tell this story.
Well, yes, that is good, and when that goes out, then people say, oh, well, yes, I would like to find out more about that.
Indeed.
And so that is basically what we in the Newry Maritime Association are about. We are trying to to bring to the fore the rich maritime history in all of its facets, and in this case, it isn't a very, very nice one, but it's still a huge part of our maritime history.
Yeah. Still part of it.
Tony, the Banter show has been with us since the 11th of June, when we had the launch of our centennial project for the Connemara Retriever. And I would say I'm delighted to see you and Mickey here today as the ongoing creation of what we hope will be a documentary for the whole centennial project. But I would say, Tony, without fear of contradiction, this is the most pivotal artifact of the whole story.
Yes.
We're standing here almost 100 years after the event, and this is the property that the bodies were brought to in November 1916, and more importantly, the spirit of generosity that James Nicholson exhibited then to allow his premises to be used as a temporary mortuary. That same spirit of generosity comes through today from his grandson Edward and his wife Shirley, who have unveiled the plaque today. And we only they only needed the one time of asking, can we have an event on your property? Absolutely, we were told. They were so proud.
Well done, Edward and Shirley.
Yes.
you're another part of this historical event, I have to say.
No, and thank you, Tony, for coming, for being a part of it and recording a very, very important chapter today at this barn, Nicholson's barn, built, as you see, Maggie, if you take a look, 1913, and 3 years later, the awful tragedy and the role that the barn played, and we're so happy to be here today, and I can't stress enough how thankful we are to Edward and Shirlee for accommodating us here today. Yes. And as you say, we're going up to the house now, and hopefully you'll talk to them and you'll talk to a few more people, and it's an ongoing chapter in our centennial project. And thanks to the Banter show, thanks to Tony and Mickey. And what do we say, Tony?
Razor. We'll be back soon, friends. Welcome back, friends. I'm now joined with Edward and Shirlee Nicholson, and they've kindly invited us into their beautiful home here in Moore Lodge and Derryogue Road here in Kilkeel in the beautiful county of Down. And Edward, it's been a very poignant day, really, hasn't it?
Oh, it has indeed. Especially there's relatives of the deceased here today, a couple from England. It sort of brings it sort of home.
It does. I was talking to three ladies earlier on. It's incredible, and just to think the knock-on effect even after 100 years ago.
Yeah, that's
it really is incredible. And Shirlee, you got the nibbles on for us today, and I have to say thank you very much. Very tasty. We're treated well here today.
Very welcome indeed. I have to thank a few of my friends for doing that. Yes, Jeanette and Martin and Jana. They were a great help to me today.
Well done, folks. The food was lovely. We all thoroughly enjoyed it on your hospitality.
Good stuff. You're welcome.
And what, you got a new horse. We're just going to give the new horse a shout out here at the Banter show.
Yeah, my Charlie boy. I bought him yesterday.
Only yesterday, and he's beautiful.
He's absolutely gorgeous.
What do you think?
Never bring anything about a house with mouth on it.
Only in friends, only in the Banter show. That's a serious one. That's a serious one. Eddie and Shirlee, it's been an absolute pleasure to meet you.
You're welcome.
And thanks for talking to us.
You
and
too.
Your hospitality on the Banter show.
No problem.
Much appreciated.
You're welcome.
And listen, a big razor. And that's to Shirlee and Eddie. Friends, we'll be back soon. Welcome back, friends. We're now joined with the lovely Joanne Ross from the Outlook paper.
Yes.
So it's where digital media meets paper media, isn't it?
Exactly, we're multi-platform today, Tony.
Multi-platform, multitaskers.
Indeed.
Joanne, it's lovely, and thanks for talking to us.
Not at all.
Tell us a bit about the Outlook now.
Well, where do I start? Well, it all started in 1940. The Outlook is a very proud community newspaper. Tony, we cover everything. We cover everything from the mart reports to the breaking news for the area, and we just love to get input from our readers. So if anyone out there wants to get in touch with us, you know where we are. We're in our Fryland office. Pick up the phone. We're a very friendly bunch, I promise you.
Very, very friendly.
Yes, and so we just really like to keep our fingers on the pulse, and it's a job that I enjoy, and it's more than a job. It's my life, I'll have to admit. For most of the time, yes, my obsession. Very good, I think so.
Yeah, it's a bit like me with the Banter show here.
It is.
So we're all happy campers, aren't we?
We are.
And it's the Outlook newspaper, but is it the Refrain Outlook or the County Down or the?
It's the County Down Outlook, yes.
Just for all our friends across the world, because sometimes we have to tell our viewers, you know. So it's the County Down. It's the Outlook, friends. Check it out. You're online as well, are you?
We are. We have a website. We're online, and we have a Twitter account, as all good media outlets now have, and we're on Facebook. So get in touch with us any which way, and we're happy to chat.
There you go, friends. So from me and Joanne Ross, here in the beautiful Derryogue Road in Kilkeel, you know the crack, friends. Razor, we're out of here. Joanne, thanks for talking to us.
Thank you.